Hello again, Patrick here. Today we're going to be looking at rendering our first scene, taking a look at all the different components of it, breaking it down, and trying to look at it in bite-sized components. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to have to do is create a skeleton HTML document, and that's going to allow us to put all of our WebGL stuff basically in a scene. So I'm going to open up Notepad++ right now and get started. So I'm going to write a little HTML. Type HTML. Put in some HTML body tags. And we will title this. We'll call it our WebGL skeleton framework. Good. All right, next we're going to have to load up a couple libraries. Script type equals text source, and we haven't placed this in the correct folder yet, but let's just assume we're going to put it in a JS folder, and that's where I'd like to hold most of my JavaScript. And then I'm going to load up jQuery just so we have a couple extra functions from there. We'll need to grab that from the Google CDN, which stands for Content Display Network. Let me look up that URL actually real quick. You can easily just Google search Google jQuery CDN to find this. You'll see this Google hosted libraries. Just click on that and you can click on the jQuery and then come right down to snippet 1. We don't need 2.0, and that'll give us the most up-to-date one. Just grab that and then reference that. Now you can download this locally and load it up that way, but just for simplicity's sake, we'll just take it right off of their CDN. So all right, next we need to load up our THREE.js file. So just do that. Text, JavaScript. And forgive me if I mistype. I type too quickly for my own good sometimes. We'll just enclose that. All right, what we're going to need to do now is actually load those files up, the THREE.js, and eventually we're going to actually load up a main file. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that now. So we'll just do a new file there. We're going to save this as, and what we'll do is we'll go directly to where we're going to hold our files, which is going to be under the WAMP directory. www, and let's just create a new directory here. Folder WebGL. Then I'm going to create another subfolder here. It's just going to be called JS. Okay. In this, we're going to switch the language over to JavaScript and save this as main.js. And we will save this as index. Up one folder though. Index.html. Make sure you select HTML as the document. Otherwise, it'll save it as a text file. All right, next we're going to need to put the Mr. Dube's THREE.js build in there. You got to make sure you grab the build as opposed to the source. This isn't going to be complete. This is just going to be a variety of all the different pieces, but none of them all put together in one. So we'll go into the build and we'll grab this. Now, if at a later point you're working with a production site, you're going to want the min. But for now, we'll do the regular one because that's going to enable us to actually debug and look at all the code. So I'm just going to copy that. Go into the JS file and paste that in there. Alright, so we have those dependencies all set up. We can go ahead and close that up now. Alright, let's continue writing this. Now, typically I like to keep my style sheets separate, but for today's purposes, I don't think it's really that necessary. So we'll just go ahead and we'll just do a quick thing just so you can see. We'll set the margins to 0 and the overflow to hidden. This will just basically allow everything to be full screen. I'll go ahead and close that style and put that on the correct line. It's good practice to keep these things looking straight. Makes your code easier to read. Let's go ahead and put some body tags in here. And then we'll need a div ID, and this is going to be the reference in which we append the DOM using jQuery. This is actually going to put our scene inside of the actual DOM. So I'm going to go ahead and end that div. Right, next we're going to have to load up our script. One thing you have to be careful with when using THREE.js is that your scripts often need to be enclosed in the actual body because you need everything to load first. And although most people like to load everything in either the head or the footer, in this case we have to actually load it into the body, and it can drive you crazy if you end up trying to figure out everything that's going on and why things aren't loading properly. And a lot of times it's just the fact that you haven't loaded everything in the proper location. Okay, so let's close up this body tag now, and then we'll close up the HTML tag. And then we're going to go over to our main file. Dum dum dum. Alright, so I'm going to use a little bit of jQuery shorthand for writing this. And this just basically means on load. So when your document loads up, fire off this script. Alright, so first we have our scene. So this is going to be our scene variable. New three dot scene. Just remember that everything is cap sensitive, so you have to be very careful. Our camera, this is going to be our camera object. New 3 perspective camera. Alright, and this is the aspect ratio followed by window dot inner width divided by window dot inner height. Get that right? Yep. Height. Okay. And then this is clipping. 0.1 500. And then our renderer, which is just exactly as you would think. It's how everything is going to render onto the screen. There are different render engines you can actually use. For example, there's an ASCII one. It takes color values and assigns them physical characters. This one is just a WebGL version, WebGL renderer. All right, next let's set the background color. Renderer set clear color, and then it's going to take a hex value, so we'll just use 0x and then my favorite color, black. 0 0 0 0 0 0 6 zeros. We'll just close that up. All right, next let's set the size of the renderer. Window dot inner width, comma, window dot inner height. Okay, so that basically assigns it the values of the window size. So it's going to take a measurement when you load the thing up. However, it's not going to continue running this function, so you have to remember that if you resize it, none of this stuff is going to update. It's only good for one shot unless you hit reload on it. All right, let's add an axis just so we can take a look at it. Var axis and equals new 3 axes helper, and this is just the length of each of the legs on the axes. So it's 10, and let's add that to the scene. So the scene is actually like, when you think about it, a container that holds all these different objects inside of it. All right, and now let's add something to look at. We're going to do a cube, so we'll do var cube. And this is going to be the geometry of it. So let's not misspell that. Equals new 3 box geometry, and we'll give it a unit list length of 5, 5, and 5. Now let's assign it a material. And what we're really doing when we do a basic material is just assigning it a color value. So we'll do a gray. So we'll go in and pull in a hex on that, 0, DD. That should be gray right there. And then we'll just turn on the wireframe just so we can see how it breaks down the pieces. All right, perfect. All right, next, let's put it all together. Now, of course, you could do this all in line if you wanted to and have it all run as one code. It would just be really hard to read. So it's kind of better to do it this way. Separate it. All right, perfect. All right, let's put it in a position just so we can see how everything is related. We're going to assign it 0, 0, equals 0. Scene. Now we have to add it to the scene. And it just adds the whole object after you've put everything together. All right, now let's assign a position for the camera. All right, and finally, we'll have the camera look at our scene. Scene dot position. All right, perfect. All right, now let's add this object to the DOM. We'll use, again, jQuery shorthand for that. So let's reference it by ID, hashtag web GL container dot append render DOM element. Renderer dot render scene comma camera, and then we'll close this up, and hopefully I'm going to do save all right now. We'll open up our browser real quick, go to localhost /webgl. And look at that, it works. Now, of course, we haven't added any controls or anything like that else to the scene, so we can't exactly move around. You can also see that it's triangulated, all these different faces right here. So, and then our axis gizmo. And you can see it all lines up and builds it off of that 0, 0 position right there, which is where the axis starts at. So that's pretty much it for creating your first scene. Again, you don't have to do it the way I did it. You can separate. You don't have to separate all of this code. You can incorporate it all directly right into here. Just for me, for stylistic purposes, I like to keep everything nice and separate. All right, so that's your first scene, and we'll be looking into more things that you can do a little bit later. Thank you again, and don't forget to subscribe.